Good morning. So I want to kick things off with going back in time for a little bit. How many of you are old enough to remember the final episode of MASH? Okay. So I don't know how many of you know this, but 107 million people watched that episode when it aired. Fast forward to when the US version of The Office aired. How many people do you think watched that final episode when it was broadcast? What's your guess? Or did you watch? Just say you watched it? Okay. 107 million people watched the final episode of MASH. 6 million people watched the final episode of The Office. But the most streamed show on Netflix is The Office. So the way we consume content has changed dramatically. Our idea of television, our idea of content has changed dramatically. My daughter's idea of TV is her laptop and Netflix. But there's lots of content and it's in many forms. And with that, we've seen the rise of podcasting because there's an element of convenience for it. I can listen to it in the car, I can listen to it on the subway, and so on. And it's very easy to get into podcasting. So I don't know how many of you listen to this podcast, stuff you should know, but it's amazing to me, and hopefully you'll find it in the same way, what topics people will find of interest. So this particular podcast spent 41 minutes talking about the Etch-a-Sketch and how it came to be. They've covered topics such as what makes us yawn, how barcodes work, how yo-yos work, how igloos work. When you are pressed for time, safety pins, and do any of us really know what turbulence is? And does the 5-second really work? The 5-second rule. But my favorite is they spent an hour talking about the ballpoint pen, how it came to be, rivalry amongst inventors and patents and so on. They actually made an hour's worth of content that was really, really interesting about the ballpoint pen. And the reason I bring this up, I'm here at a mining industry event, is because there are plenty of stories to tell. There are plenty of things that you can say that are of interest to your audience. It's about figuring out what those topics are and how you can deliver it. Now, I'm using Canada as an example, but in this instance, in terms of time spent, the top 2 websites for time spent by Canadians is Facebook and YouTube. And when you think about YouTube,
Alright, so here we are in front of the elephants. The cool thing about these guys is that they have really long fronts, and that's cool. And that's pretty much all there is to say.
So, poor audio, I know, but that's a person in a zoo talking about how an elephant has a long trunk. Not earth-shattering news. But that's the very first video ever uploaded to YouTube by a member of the YouTube team. So the bar was very low, okay? So take the pressure off yourselves in terms of producing content. 5 billion videos are watched on YouTube every single day. 100 million hours of video per day are watched on Facebook. But I want to highlight, 85% of the videos watched on Facebook are watched without sound. So from a storytelling, from a content point of view, you need to use captions, or you need to be more visual in your storytelling. And finally, video content get 1,200% more shares than written content. And according to a recent study from Cisco, by 2022, 82% of online content will be video. And when it comes to a breakdown of what people want in terms of content from brands, video tops it, email newsletters second, social images, social videos are round out the top 4. The last 2 are blog articles and content in PDF form that you have to fill out a form to download. Now, I'm not here to say stop writing blog articles, because I write as well, and I'm not saying stop having gated content in PDF format, but what I am here to suggest is, from a content strategy point of view, is use the other richer media to complement your written content and vice versa. So I'm the former head of social media strategy for the Royal Bank. And so when an analyst would produce a lengthy report, and they do that all the time, and rightfully so, you could envision having that report available for download as a lead capture mechanism for people to fill out a form to get access to it. But the person who authored that report could be interviewed by video. That video goes on YouTube. I can rip the audio from that video, and now I turn it into a podcast, and I can transcribe what they say and turn that into a blog. So it's about taking one digital asset and making multiple versions of it. But no matter the format, you want to have content that educates, content that people see as valuable to them, and content that's helpful. So most of you won't know who this organization is. This is a company called Indium Corporation. They make solder paste. This is the material used to connect electronic components to assembly boards. I know, it's very sexy stuff. But they have 72 keyword-driven blogs written by a dozen-plus engineers, and their motto is content to contact to cash. Their head of sales told the director of marketing, who I interviewed, that the social media-generated leads were the most profitable and the most qualified. So if Indium Corporation can write content about solder paste, and it's worth doing, it's a profitable endeavor for them, surely you have a story or two that you can tell. But think about from the perspective on your content, as your content needs to be the best answer to questions and information that your audience is seeking. So social media usage in Canada, just to use as a gauge, I recognize that not everyone is focused solely on the Canadian marketplace, but I just use this as a gauge because the proportions are much the same globally. 76% of people in Canada with an internet account are on Facebook. 48% with an internet account are on LinkedIn, and then 34 for Twitter and Instagram, and then 33 and 21 for Pinterest and Snapchat, respectively. So a lot of the mining industry is on Twitter, and rightfully so. It's a valuable channel for disseminating news, but I highlight this because there's a channel or two that you're missing from the dissemination of information, and it's actually bigger and more engaging when it comes to mining content. So Twitter in Canada doesn't even, of the top 10 countries in the world using Twitter, Canada isn't even in the top 10. The US is, but you know, I recognize you may not be able to see it from the back, but are any of the markets that you're targeting, any of the countries that you operate in, represented here? And let me be the first to say, I love Twitter. I really do. It's fantastic, it's really valuable for information, but it's not the only channel you should be on. I know you can't see this from the back, but we did some analysis about where engagement happens the most. Just using the website mining.com as an example, content from mining.com for the last 2 years, engagement related to that content was dominated by Facebook. Just content on, about the mining industry as a topic, again, dominated by Facebook. And I'm not here to evangelize Facebook necessarily. I'm just here to present to you that this is a channel that's dominating for engaging content related to the mining industry. And if you're not playing there or you're just dabbling, you may want to consider adjusting your strategy. However, when you are there, there is some challenges, the biggest. However, organic reach on Facebook is approaching near zero. So that means because it's so popular and there's so much content, it's a challenge to become visible. But there are ways with the right kind of content and with a paid media strategy that you can make your content more visible. And as well, when it gets into the type of content that's the most engaging there, two companies, BuzzSumo and Buffer, some technology that we use in our work, did a study looking at 777 million posts. And of those 770 million posts, they looked at the top 500, and 80% of the top performing posts of that near billion types of content was video, followed by imagery, and then less than 0.2% was content with a link. So what kind of content are people looking for? They want inspirational, they want funny, they want helpful. Now, I recognize you can't be any one of those three in every case when it comes to content. So, but people aren't necessarily looking for highly polished, high production content. They will forgive content for less polished, more DIY, and even user-generated content. The top 10 sites that are producing content on Facebook, hard to read from the back, but Lad Bible, Unilad, Taste Life, Tasty. The reason I highlight this is they all fit into those categories: recipes, helpful, crafts, and funny. Because when you think about the last piece of content you engaged with, what was it about that content that was engaging? But we are competing for people's attention. And so, people are shifting their attention from desktop to phone, and when they are on the phone, how are you going to ensure that the content you're sharing on the phone stops them from scrolling? So this is just a screenshot, but under that category of helpful content, you have a situation where this is a craft site where they showed how to put a knife and a piece of wire from a hanger. I know it has nothing to do with mining, but just go with me here. And they made a peeler. But that's not the important part. That kind of content had 96 million views, just being crafty. And I want to, how many of you remember the Ice Bucket Challenge? User-generated content, challenging people to a contest, and this is where Facebook realized how viral video content was. And I know we've got to move along from the standpoint of content, but because of video on Facebook, it was so, performed so well, Facebook gives preferential treatment to video on the platform as opposed to content shared from YouTube.
This is a sandwich. So's this. Here's another sandwich. All sandwiches have starch on top and bottom. It's the cube rule of food. If food only has starch on the bottom, that's toast. Obviously this is toast, but so's this and this. Apple crisp? That's just toast with the jam side down. Let's review. This is toast and this is a sandwich. A hot dog's a sandwich, right? Wrong! It's a taco because it has starch on 3 sides. So this is a taco and that's a taco. 4 sides of starch make food a sushi. Sushi. That's hard to say. And if there's starch on 5 sides, that's a quiche. Here's a quiche, there's a quiche, everywhere a quiche. Finally, we come to the calzone. Obviously, this is a calzone, but so are these. Don't forget the sweet calzone, creamy calzone, carnival calzone, and the Colonel Sanders calzone. That's right, fried chicken is a calzone. There are exceptions, like the salads. These are salads. And steak is a salad. Then there's the cakes. Lasagna's a beefcake. And so's this guy. Total beefcake. Visualize your sandwiches and anything else with Lucidchart.
I share that as an example of video content, but it's from a software company showing how to use their software by explaining sushi. And I know we don't really have any time left. This is, I just want to highlight, I'm going to skip this one. This is a video from Well-Simple, and it's just that idea of storytelling without sound. But in the interest of time, we've got to jump through. The only other thing I want to share with you is this one. When you think about some of the news announcements that you make, how do I complement some of those news announcements with something more visual to stop that scroll? So this is the one example I want to give you. This is an animation from Well-Simple when they were announcing $4 billion of assets under management. This came out to coincide with their announcement. It's just a very simple visual, but it stops people, gets their attention. And I just want to jump to the end in terms of things to consider. Are your content efforts consistent? Are you being the best answer? Are you delivering content that your audience wants to see? And your audience is hungry for content, so deliver as best that you can. And as I highlighted in some of the examples here, the bar is not set very high. People will forgive production value for access and consistency. And always be on the lookout for new content opportunities. Thank you very much.